All right, so all those sci-fi movies where robots like take over everyone's jobs? Well, it turns out the reality of AI is actually way more interesting and a lot less Hollywood. Today we're diving into how AI is genuinely changing how we work, and it's honestly pretty optimistic from what I've been reading. But before we get into all that, I think we need to take a step back and talk about like what AI even is. We always hear about robots and self-driving cars, but it's a lot more than that, right? One of the sources I was looking at had this great analogy that said that instead of thinking about AI as replacing humans, we should think of it as like an extension of our abilities, like a super powerful tool that can help us do things we never could before. For example, there's this wild story about an AI that predicted a major tech stock crash months before it happened. And get this, it even outperformed like seasoned analysts who had been following the market for years. And that's just one example. It really shows how AI is already changing things in different fields. But what about the fear that AI is going to steal our jobs? I mean, it's something that comes up a lot. But the sources I read actually suggest the opposite might be true. What are your thoughts on that? It really is pretty incredible to think about all the potential AI has, not just in business, but in all these other fields. But of course, like with any powerful technology, there are going to be challenges, right? One thing that really stood out to me in the sources was this whole issue of bias in AI models. You know how they can inherit biases from the data they're trained on? It's almost like if you teach a kid with biased textbooks, they might grow up with a skewed perspective on the world. And it seems like the same thing can happen with AI. Like, for example, let's say you have a hiring algorithm that was trained on data where women were historically underrepresented in leadership positions. The AI could end up favoring male candidates, even if it's not explicitly programmed to do so. It's a tough problem to solve. Yeah, it's a bit of a catch-22. Yeah. It makes you realize how careful we need to be with the data we use to train these systems. It has to be diverse, representative, and definitely free from harmful biases. And then there's the whole issue of data privacy, which is a huge concern. AI models need massive amounts of data to train right. And a lot of times that data includes personal information, like our health records, financial details, even our browsing history. It's definitely stuff you wouldn't want falling into the wrong hands. So it raises some big questions about data collection, storage, and how it's used. We have to make sure these systems respect our privacy and follow all the data protection laws. One of the sources I was looking at brought up this idea of synthetic data, which I thought was really interesting. Have you heard much about that?
Oh, yeah. Synthetic data is basically artificial data that's designed to mimic real data. So instead of training an AI on real people's information, you use this synthetic data to create realistic scenarios.
So it's kind of like creating a virtual playground where AI can learn and experiment without any risk of, compromising someone's privacy.
Exactly. And that's one of its big advantages. It helps address those privacy concerns we were just talking about.
It's a pretty clever solution.
Hmm.
But are there any limitations to using synthetic data? I mean, can it really be as effective as training on real data?
Well, that's one of the big challenges. You have to make sure the synthetic data is a good enough representation of the real world. If it's not, the AI won't learn effectively. Like, you wouldn't want a self-driving car to learn only on simulations, right? It needs some real-world experience.
That makes sense. So it needs to be a good balance between synthetic and real-world data for the AI to truly learn. Thinking about all of this, it's pretty obvious that we need some new skills and knowledge to navigate this rapidly changing world. I mean, how do we prepare for a future where AI is everywhere?
Well, one thing's for sure, the sources I've looked at all emphasize the importance of adaptability and lifelong learning. It's not just about learning a specific technical skill anymore. It's about being able to constantly learn, unlearn, and relearn as the technology changes.
So it's more about being flexible and adaptable to whatever changes come along.
Exactly. And it's also about focusing on those uniquely human skills that AI can't replicate, like creativity, critical thinking, emotional intelligence, and complex problem solving.
So those are the things that will set us apart in a world where AI can automate so many tasks.
Right. Instead of fearing AI, we should focus on developing those skills that make us human.
Yeah, it's not about humans versus machines. It's about working together and using the strengths of both to create something really innovative. It's fascinating to think about how all of this will play out in different fields. Like take healthcare, for example.
Mm.
We already talked about how AI can be used for faster diagnosis, but what other impacts might it have on healthcare in the future?
Well, one area where AI has huge potential is in personalized medicine. Imagine AI-powered virtual assistants that could monitor our health in real time, giving us personalized advice, and even flagging potential health issues before they become serious.
Wow, that sounds pretty incredible. Almost like having a personal AI doctor on call 24/7.
And think about AI-assisted robotic surgery. It could make procedures less invasive and much more precise.
That does sound amazing, but also a little unnerving. Are we talking about a future where robots are operating on us?
Well, not exactly. It's not about replacing human doctors and nurses completely. It's about giving them better tools to enhance their skills and improve outcomes for patients.
So healthcare is still human-centric, even with all these AI advancements.
Absolutely. It's about finding the right balance between technology and the human touch.
Right. We don't want to lose that empathy and compassion that's so important in healthcare. But it also makes you wonder about accessibility and affordability. Will AI make quality healthcare available to more people, or will it create a bigger gap between those who can afford it and those who can't?
It's a complex issue for sure. AI definitely has the potential to make healthcare more accessible and affordable. For example, telehealth platforms can connect patients with specialists remotely, and AI-powered diagnostic tools could be used in areas with limited resources.
So it could really help democratize healthcare in a way.
Yeah, potentially.
Yeah.
But there's always the risk that these technologies could end up mainly benefiting those who can already afford them, further marginalizing those who are underserved.
It seems like there are a lot of different factors to consider. It's a topic that deserves its own deep dive at some point. But for now, I think we've covered a lot of ground in this part of our exploration of AI. We've talked about ethical considerations, data privacy, bias, synthetic data, and even the future of healthcare. It's a lot to process, but it's also fascinating. So in the first two parts, we talked a lot about the power of AI and how it's transforming everything. But now I kind of want to shift gears a bit and think about what all this means for us, on a personal level and as a society. Like, how do we navigate this world where AI is everywhere? What are the skills we'll need? And I guess, how do we make sure AI benefits everyone, not just a few? I don't know about you, but sometimes it feels like technology is moving so fast, it's hard to keep up. But honestly, when I was reading these sources, I actually found some things that were pretty reassuring.
Oh, yeah, like what?
Well, one thing they emphasize is that this isn't about like, humans versus machines. Like, it's not a competition or anything. The future is more about collaboration.
Right, like figuring out how to use the best of both worlds.
Exactly. Leveraging AI's strengths while also, cultivating those human skills that will be even more important in this new world. Things like creativity, critical thinking, emotional intelligence, problem solving, all those things that machines can't really replicate.
Yeah, it's funny. One of the sources said it really well. They said instead of fearing AI, we should focus on developing those skills that AI can't do.
I like that. It's a good reminder that we actually have a lot of power to shape our future, even with all this crazy technological advancement.
Absolutely.
It really comes down to remembering that AI is a tool. And like any tool, it can be used for good or bad, right? It's
Yeah.
up to us, the people creating and using it, to make sure it's used ethically and for the benefit of everyone. Earlier, we talked about responsible AI development.
Yeah.
But what does that actually look like, in practice? Like, what steps can we take to ensure AI is used for good, both individually and as a society?
Well, I think it starts with awareness and education. The more we understand about AI, what it can and can't do, the better equipped we'll be to have conversations about it and make informed choices.
So like reading articles like the ones we're discussing now, staying up to date on the latest developments,
Yeah.
maybe even experimenting with AI tools ourselves.
Exactly. All of that helps us become more informed and empowered.
And it's not just about individual actions either,
Right.
right? Like, we need to push for policies and regulations that promote ethical AI development, protect our data privacy, and address those biases and discrimination issues we talked about.
Yeah, absolutely. It's about being proactive and shaping the future we want instead of just waiting to see what happens.
And that future, if we get it right, could be pretty amazing. I mean, not just in terms of technological progress, but for human progress too.
Totally.
Like, if we approach AI thoughtfully, with a focus on ethics and using it for good, we can potentially solve some of humanity's biggest challenges, like climate change, poverty, disease. I mean, think about it.
It's a future worth fighting for, that's for sure.
And ultimately, it comes down to the choices we make today, the actions we take right now. So as we wrap up this deep dive, I'm feeling kind of like a mix of excitement and responsibility. It's clear that AI is changing everything, and the future has incredible potential for both good and bad. It's up to all of us to make sure it benefits everyone. Well, thanks for joining me on this exploration. I hope it's made you curious and got you thinking about the role AI is playing in our lives. The future's here, and it's up to us to shape it.